Hello and welcome to another episode of Fan-Made Games. And I decided after the announcement of Pokemon Sun and Moon, it was finally time to finish this video up that I've been working on for a long time. The Pokemon community is one crazy community, making tons of awesome fan content like art, comics, custom Pokemon, and video games. So I think it's time to hop into some fan-made Pokemon games. I want to start off with the most simplistic and yet interesting game in this first part, seeing as the rest of the games on this list are going to follow kind of your basic Pokemon rules, while this one takes a totally different route. Pokemon Island throws you on an island filled with every Pokemon you can imagine, and has you battle your way through a Pokemon League to increase your rank. As you enter tournaments and defeat enemies in singles and doubles matches, you will increase in rank, giving you access to new areas to explore, allowing you to find new types of Pokemon to catch. Each area has its own special flair to it, from a lava-filled cave to a mystical forest, and each area has Pokemon in it that fits that environment. As you train your Pokemon, you can take them to battle other trainers, win tournament matches, train them with mini-games, or trade them for other Pokemon. Plus, if you get bored of fighting and battling, there are also other things you can do to tide yourself over, including a game corner with slots and other gambling-type games, shops to buy items and even Pokemon, or even play a custom Pokemon version of Triple Triad. And nothing is better than Triple Triad. Plus, at the start of the game, you get to choose between 12 characters and 9 starter Pokemon, allowing you to really play how you want. Next up is a game I really couldn't enjoy, sadly enough, but don't let that drive you away from trying it. The game I'm talking about is Pokemon Rejuvenation, which is heavily based off of Pokemon Reborn, a game I decided to not go over. Pokemon Reborn, for those of you who don't know, was a game developed by members of the Pokemon Reborn forum, wishing for a more challenging Pokemon game. And that's just what they did, making gym leaders have crazy strategies and styles that would cause you to really think from a professional level on how to defeat them. And Rejuvenation took this idea and added on to it. Thankfully though, Pokemon Rejuvenation gives the option of difficulty to the player, allowing you to choose from 3 different difficulties: Easy, Reborn difficulty, or Nuzlocke. I myself, being only a decent Pokemon player, decided to pick the Easy mode just to enjoy the story of the game, and well, things didn't go so well. First off, the story takes a weird turn very quickly, with your mom working with some bad guys and a bomb on a boat, and on top of that there's tentacles all over the place and a lot of fourth wall breaking. You know, just a lot of crap I was having trouble comprehending. And then once the game actually starts, well, that's when the trouble happened. After you escape the boat you're on, you end up in a city and are told to explore and defeat the first gym leader. But the gym leader isn't at the gym. You have to go find him or her around town. Problem is, the town is a maze of apartments and roads that I can't find my way around, so I'm going through apartments, fighting people and winning sometimes and losing other times. I was able to find a place that gave out what seemed to be side quests, but I just didn't want to waste my time on that at the moment so I could focus on moving the story forward. But then the unthinkable happens. I enter an apartment just like any of the others I've been searching through to try and find the gym leader, except I bump into a trainer who tells me he will destroy me with his elite team of Pokemon. The battle starts and I'm like, oh look, cool, he's got 3 Pokemon versus my 1, maybe I'll have a small chance. Until the dude slam dunks his level 76 Alakazam all over my poor level 12 Charmander. And I don't even know what his other 2 Pokemon are. Like, why is there a level 76 dude in the first town? After that, my hopes were crushed, and I decided continuing to explore for the gym leader was a waste of time and to move on to the next game. And move on I did to Pokemon Gray Topaz, a game with a darker story. Since your mother left you to join the Elite Four, you have secluded yourself inside your room and never leave. But eventually your dad decides to kick you out and give you a Pokemon in hopes that you'll start your journey and not be a lazy slouch. And after choosing from 15 starters, including all the Pokemon from Red/Blue up to White/Black, you get to fight your rivals, and they're quite rude. Like, they act all nice when I battle them, but at the end when I beat them, the nice person whispers under their breath that I'm a piece of shit. Which, isn't really cool, but, I beat them pretty bad, so I guess it's fair. And after some traveling, I meet my first boss who kicks my butt, so I had to grind for a while, getting 4 Pokemon to level 9 to beat him, and the 2 other bosses from the evil organization that followed afterwards. And after saving the gym leader, it was time to get my first badge. Too bad I never got it. Yeah, the first gym leader ripped through me. Even with the fact I had a flying Pokemon to take on his grass Pokemon, I still lost. Overall, it was a very interesting game that I enjoyed, and if you aren't afraid of a decent challenge, this game is for you. Plus, on top of what I mentioned, from what I can read and see, there's also side quests to get legendaries and post-game content which could have you playing for a while, even after beating the Elite Four. Plus, the graphics are also pretty nice, I guess. The next game is an interesting one called Pokemon Uranium, which introduces a new world and new type of Pokemon called Nuclear to the game. But just a heads up, it is currently still in beta, so not everything is complete. But if you want a real dark story, this may be the Pokemon for you, seeing as your mom dies within the first 10 seconds of the game in a power plant meltdown, and your dad leaves you to search the world for your dead mom, leaving you alone with your old aunt who is now kicking you out because she's poor. That's some dark stuff right there. But as I stated before, there is a new type in this game known as Nuclear, though from what I played I didn't find any of them, but I'm not surprised because from what I looked up there are only 11 Nuclear Pokemon out of a Pokedex of 151 Pokemon, and 8 of the Nuclear Pokemon are just Nuclear variants of Pokemon that are already in the game, since once they're near enough nuclear waste they will change. Then you can catch them though, but you risk a disobedient Pokemon that may even attack its trainer. But there are 3 Pokemon that are nuclear type that don't have this trait. The first being a nuclear version of Eevee called Nucleon, which evolves into this form if you have a nuclear Pokemon in your party when Eevee hits level 20. Hazman, a little guy that wears a hazmat suit from the looks of it, and from the description, eats nuclear waste and can even clean up a hazardous area. And lastly, the legendary Pokemon of this game, Urane, which was created by man and must consume nuclear waste or it will power down. But sadly, this Pokemon isn't in the game yet since we are still in the beta. From what I played though, it was a pretty interesting game with a mix of Pokémon and real Pokemon and a pretty nice in-game graphical style. But also being truthful, I think the battle user face could use some work, and the Pokémon in the game are kind of just meh in my opinion. But if you are looking for an easier Pokemon game with some cool new ideas and a new world to explore, put Uranium on your list because I was able to wipe the floor with everyone I passed, even the first gym leader, with just my starter Pokemon. Next up is Pokemon Insurgence, another Pokemon game with a new type of Pokemon, but I'll get to that in a minute. Pokemon Insurgence has a few interesting options off the bat. The first allowing you to choose a more friendly story or a darker story where people will die in the dark story. There's also multiple options for different ways to play like Nuzlockes and more, which gives some replayability, but let's talk about the new type of Pokemon this game brings to the table. Once starting up the game, the professor will offer you some Pokemon stating that they must go to someone or they will be left to die, since they are special types known only to a certain island, and these are known as Delta Pokemon. Basically a Pokemon with a different typing than its original counterpart. For example, out of the starters we can choose from, we have Delta Bulbasaur, a fairy psychic type, Delta Squirtle, a dark fighting type, and my favorite that I chose, Delta Charmander, a ghost dragon type. And there are more of these throughout the game, including versions of Sunkern, Gardevoir, Scyther, Weezing, Muck, Snorlax, and more. It's a really interesting idea that makes for some awesome Pokemon to catch and play with. And on top of these Pokemon, they also added some new Mega Evolutions, though some look meh while others look awesome. For example, Mega Marowak is probably the best idea I have ever seen, while Mega Feraligatr and Mega Miltank almost look like the same Pokemon. But I guess you win some and you lose some when it comes to these things. The gameplay, on the other hand, is pretty basic and feels just like a normal Pokemon game, besides the fact that you can have Pokemon follow you around, and in battles, buffs and debuffs actually show up on the screen, which was a really cool idea I enjoyed that I hope future Pokemon games may include. This way, when I get sand thrown in my eyes, I can actually see how bad my chances of hitting my opponent really are. Next, we have Pokemon Sage, a game with only Pokémon and some amazing gameplay. The first thing you'll notice starting up the game is how beautiful it is. First, seeing a gorgeous cutscene followed by an overworld art style that's just sublime. The game is created by the people on 4chan of the VP thread and have done a fabulous job, I must say. Just looking through the list of Pokémon in this game, you can see the talent and thought that went into every single one of these Pokemon, and they all look just so cool, the starters and legendaries especially. And their in-game sprites are just as well designed, plus being able to have any Pokemon follow behind you is a huge plus. Not really, but I just love how cute it is, and this game gets a thumbs up from me just for that. On the other hand, it gets a thumbs down though, since the first Pokemon I walked into, Kapig, decided to throw sand in my face until I couldn't hit him anymore and he just destroyed me. But don't worry, I got my revenge. The new overworld to explore is also really interesting, being based off of real-world areas like South and Central America, giving a real wide range of areas you can visit. This is one game I'm probably going to go back to eventually when I get the chance, because I actually really like Pokémon, and this game does them really well. So if you're like me and that's what you're searching for, I would advise trying out this one. Now for the last game on this part, and probably the best one in my opinion, which is Pokemon Etheral Gates, a game that you can tell is built from the ground up with passion and love. Starting the game, you play as a character that has no real interest in Pokemon, but after being dragged along by a friend, you quickly start to love Pokemon and the adventure it brings, setting you on your way to train, beat gym leaders, stop Team Mythos from destroying the world, and maybe even find a legendary Pokemon that can travel between the world of the living and the world of the dead. Graphically, the game looks brilliant with its own design much different than anything else I've seen. A newly designed user face that works like a charm, a rocking fresh soundtrack to keep you battling on, a beautiful overworld based on New Zealand, and some awesome new Pokémon. Truthfully, I think this may be the best Pokemon game I have ever played, with outstanding sprite animations and even some surprises like losing to your rival in the first battle, which I think is a better idea that makes me want to better myself so I can defeat him next time we meet. But there are a few downfalls at the moment since we are playing a demo. First off, there are no battle animations, but that is because they took them out to replace the generic Pokemon Essentials battle animations to create their own that will look much better. So hopefully we will see those in a new demo. And lastly, the game gets kind of laggy at times, but again, this is due to RPG Maker XP not performing well on current generations of computers. But they are working on a fix for this issue, so hopefully with those two things out of the way, we can have one of the best Pokemon games ever made in the future. But that is everything for this video. And don't forget to come back next week for part 2 of Pokemon Fan Games, because there is some very interesting stuff in there. And don't forget, I make new content every Tuesday and Friday, so don't forget to subscribe and come back every week for new content. But until then, I'll see you all in the next video. I just have to give a huge shout out to my Patreon supporters. Without you guys, I would not be making the content I am right now. So a big thanks to Rob LaLiberty, Brad Moore, Andre Drulard, Thomas Bethel, Robert Velasco, Dominic Sharma, Martin Scoot, Maxim Lufkin, and the YouTuber Legend Gary.